Well, I understand my where I live is true that parts of it, but
Yeah, he wants.
I'm hoping to hear this.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Are you well? Hope you can all hear me. We are Direct Democracy Ireland, and Direct Democracy Ireland is a new movement. It's a people's movement, a sovereignty movement, and it's also a political movement. It became a political movement because the founders of Direct Democracy Ireland, and the both of them are here, Raymond here and Jan, realised a long time ago that this country is not under the control of the people. So we are bringing around a system which puts the people back in control. So we plan to run in the local, national and European elections, and the local and national elections are next. The local and European elections are next May, and we plan to reinstate Article 47 and 48, which were illegally removed from the 1937 Constitution. So my name is Brian Whelan. I'm a member of DDI Wicklow, and this is, as I say, is the second public meeting of DDI Wicklow. I was also involved in setting up DDI in Wexford a year ago, and that's up and running at the moment. And if I could just say a few words about DDI before I hand you over to the two main speakers. Direct Democracy Ireland is the work of several people, but one man in particular. That man is Ray Whitehead here. And some 40 years ago, Ray spent time in Switzerland. He was a student there. And while there, he noticed that Switzerland seemed to be a very well-run country. No antisocial behaviour. The place seemed very ordered, clean, and Switzerland was and is the richest country in the world. It has the highest per capita income of any country in the world. And Ray was intrigued by all this, and you can comment on this later yourself, Ray. He inquired further, and the people told him they had a system of direct democracy. And when Ray came back to Ireland, he came back to Dublin. He was involved in various careers. He was a restaurateur, nightclub owner, photographer, but he was also interested in social issues such as the Wood Quay protests, which happened in the 1970s. Quite a while ago. Younger people here probably don't remember it. I do have some recollection of it. And it related to the Wood Quay, which is on the south side of the inner city there on the quays, and which was a derelict site at that time. And people of an artistic bent, shall we say, and the greater general public wanted the site investigated for archaeological findings, because, as you might know, Dublin was founded by the Vikings, and there is undoubtedly important historical information underneath those buildings. And the protests reigned on for quite a while until the Dublin City Council got to go ahead to build their offices there, which are there to this day. Not a pretty sight, I would add. And the people who protested, Ray does talk about at one stage 100,000 people protesting in one particular protest, and 250,000 people signing a petition to have the archaeological work carried out. But anyway, in the heel of the reel, nothing happened. They got to go ahead to build their offices, and the people had to they could do nothing really except protest. And the reason they couldn't do anything is because a very important thing happened in 1937. The Article 47 was taken out of the 1937 Constitution, and that in that one very sleight of hand, it rendered the Irish people powerless, essentially. Now, you will never hear this on the mainstream media because this is not part of the agenda. The agenda is what's happening at the moment, where the state is growing ever so big in getting more and more power over the people, and their sovereignty is being eaten away. So with the reinstatement of that Article 47, if I use the example of the Wood Quay protests, this is what would have, the people would have been restored to their position of power. They would vote. If they got 3% of the electorate in any particular elected area to support a petition, that triggers a vote, and the people vote, and their will becomes law, whether they want the archaeological work to take place or not. But as Ray says, 250,000 people signed a petition, so I would say most certainly the archaeological work would have taken place. That would have been an example of how direct democracy would play out in the real world. And also with the banker bondholder bailout, if you can imagine, do this majority of people support stopping this bank or bondholder? A review of this entire process, I would say, most certainly. So we need that article reinstated, Article 47 in the Constitution. Now there's also Article 48, which is the right of recall. That means, again, any elected individual in any electoral area can be recalled if approximately 3% of the electorate support a petition, and then in turn the people vote. Do they want the elected individual recalled? Do they not? And acts as a policeman over the electoral process, which badly needs it, I think you'll agree. Anyway, if we go back to Ray is he's involved in his careers in Dublin, and he moved on to the 80s and the 90s, and I think probably, I won't put words in your mouth, Ray, but we're becoming increasingly frustrated with the political system, and you could see the system wasn't working, and you could see that the people had no power, but the people didn't grasp their situation. They were being told this is the way the system is supposed to work. And I think Ray eventually got so frustrated he started the political party in his Direct Democracy, which launched in 14th of November 2012. And Jan here became involved because Jan has 10 years experience in Direct Democracy in its application in the real world. And he has represented Ireland on Direct Democracy, and he has also been to Iceland, where about 6 years ago, they had the same financial crisis as we had, but their handling of it was totally different. They basically kicked out bankers and they arrested corrupt politicians and rewrote their constitution. Now, I don't know if everything is perfect in Iceland, maybe Jan will comment on that later, but that's what they done. They took control of the situation. And as I say, it launched in November of 2012. I was at that and I recorded the launch, and I'll post that up on the DDI Wicklow Facebook page. Anyway, I don't want to keep talking. Just to say what we have set up on a regional basis, and I took it upon myself to set it up in Wexford. And that's really all for me. There is a bucket there later. If you could throw a donation in, it would be appreciated. And also, if you want to join, we'd be happy to have people join Direct Democracy Ireland. Or if you don't want to join, you can just sign our mailing list. And we do send out information every few weeks as regards the updates on DDI. And so I'll hand over to Ray, who will speak next, and then we'll have some questions and answers. And then Jan will speak and some more questions and answers, and then we'll have some closing comments. Thank you.
So my name is Raymond Whitehead, and I'm the founder of Direct Democracy Ireland. It came, as Brian said, out of a sense of anger or frustration, like so many people. I had the experience, as Brian said, of studying and working in Switzerland in my early 20s. And when I landed there, when I arrived in Switzerland, I couldn't believe the sense of cleanliness, because 40 years ago in Ireland, it was a pretty grubby place. I know it's improved a bit, we still complain about it, but Switzerland was just spotless. You could eat your dinner off the street practically, it was so clean. And the sense that I had when I was there was this palpable sense of ownership that everybody had of their street, of their town, of their village. It was, this is my street, this is my town, this is my village. And you don't mess with their village or their town. They own it. They own their country as a people. They have this power that at local level, right up to national level, they can, if they see something wrong, they can just get enough signatures, they can get a percentage of the population of their town or their village, they can call a local referendum. And they can do that nationally as well. If they spread the word and enough people like the idea that they're proposing on anything, they can then push for a referendum, locally or nationally, or on a county level, canton as they call it there. So there's this real sense of empowerment. Anybody walking down the street can change the country or can change their village if enough people they can get to agree with them on something that they might see. So the whole population of Switzerland has an input into how the country is run. And there's a lot of clever people in Switzerland, as there are a lot of clever people in Ireland. And those ideas in our country never come to the public attention, or rarely. There are more and more now the internet and people blogging, but we don't still have a mechanism to see those ideas rise to the top of public awareness and be implemented. There is no mechanism. You can have the best idea at all. You know, I had a proposal that I put to, and this is partly why I started the party, I had a few proposals that I put to ministers. I was completely ignored. I got no response. And I didn't like that. I became very angry. So one of my proposals was to eliminate pollution from all motor vehicles in the state. And they complain about pollution, and they complain about the health benefits, the health implications of pollution and all of that. But none of them were willing to do anything. And again, I was ignored. I wasn't even, you know, I didn't even get a reply saying thank you for your suggestion or whatever. Nothing. So I got rather frustrated. But in Switzerland, if I decided to go out and get some, you know, signatures, and the people agreed with me on the proposal I had, I could implement that locally or implement it on a county level or nationally. So that's the kind of power that these people had. And it was a real contrast and a shock coming from Ireland, where people just shrug their shoulders and go, what's the point? What can we do? You know, there's a total sense of apathy here. And the system we have of representative democracy, of electing somebody else to fulfill promises that they've made to us and that they can renege on at any time and just walk away from, as we've seen recently, is a very frustrating system. Because people can lie continually in politics, and do lie, just to get elected. Now, in Direct Democracy Ireland, we have one main policy, and that is to take that power and put it back into the hands of the people, where the people can hold the government. If we get in, the people will be able to hold us accountable, or anybody accountable. So when I saw this in Switzerland, it stayed in my mind for a long time. And again, coming back to Ireland, you know, I had this sense that, you know, like everybody else, what's the point? That, you know, I'm not a politician, I know nothing about politics, I have no interest in politics, and I just got on with my life. But when everything went belly up here a few years ago, I just got so angry that I took this leap into the dark, and I hired a hotel room like this. I rang a load of friends and people everybody on my phone list. I got about 70 people into a room, and they all signed up when I proposed this to them. I said, how would you like to have a say in your own country, in your own politics, in your own locality? And they all went, yeah, I'd like a piece of that. I said, I explained to them the system in Switzerland, and they all signed up. And I only needed 300 signatures to set up a political party, so I thought, you know, I'm almost a third of the way there already. And it was a no-brainer. Everywhere I spoke to people about this, they all wanted to have a say. There was this horrible sense of frustration that we have no input, that we're constantly electing an elite group of people who play merry-go-rounds with us. You know, it's just like an old boys club. There is no alternative. Even trying to set up Direct Democracy Ireland now is very hard, because we're up against a closed almost system. It's very hard to get national media coverage, even though we contested an election there last March and a year ago, and we got a little bit of coverage afterwards, and everything closed down after that. They couldn't deny us the coverage initially, but everything just closed down. It's very hard for any party to set up, and we've seen one or two high-profile people talking about it, and nothing's come about it over the last year or two. So I think the fact that somebody like myself, who's just an ordinary person really, being able to set up a political party means that the message that we have really is a no-brainer. I think most people in this room tonight will say they would like to have an input, even if it doesn't get anywhere. And the whole thing about direct democracy, people would say, well, if you had that system, we'd have a referendum every day of the week. But that's not necessarily so, because it's kind of a self-regulating system. So let's say I decided, or one of you decided, everybody in Ireland should wear pink shoes. Well, good luck with that. You've every right to go out and try to pass a law where everybody wears pink shoes, but I don't think you'll get very far. So it's a fairly crazy idea anyway. So it's not going to get anywhere. But if I turned around, or one of you turned around and said, why do we pay these bondholders? What's the point? You know, it's illegal under international law. It comes under odious debt. You can't impose a tax on the people that they didn't incur themselves. So why are we paying this? Do you think you get a few signatures? I think so. So, you know, it's a fairly self-regulating kind of system. And if you want to waste your time trying to get people to wear pink shoes or whatever, some crazy idea, great. You have every right to do that. It's your time, it's your money, it's your energy or whatever. But if you have an idea and you can spread, and that is a good idea, it will spread. If the mechanism is there to have it implemented, that's real power. And there are so many things in this country that need changing. There are so many things that the government is imposing on us. It's not even just our government, it's the EU are imposing on us. We're not even in charge of our own government isn't even in charge of the country anymore. A lot of these things like water charges and property taxes are being imposed on us now. 80% of our laws come from the EU. We're out of control. We have no control. Even the people we elect have no power, or very little power now. Our budgets virtually have to be passed by Brussels. So we are proposing to take this power back into our own hands. And, you know, I have great faith in Irish people, because when you look around you, we're a small island, really. And yet we've so much talent in this country. We have Nobel Prize laureates. You know, we have companies that are international. We're leaders in beef production. We're world leaders in milk powder. We're the number one exporters of milk powder. We have so many different, our engineers, our software people are the best in the world. We have so many areas that we are virtually number one in. We have some very clever people in this country. We have a decent educational system at the moment. It's being dumbed down, I believe. But anyway, we have great people, and we could turn this country around as a people. But we're not being given alternatives. We're being told what the choices are when it comes to the banking problems, when it comes to so many problems. We're being told that this is the choice. We're not hearing alternatives. Now, you get it on the internet, but again, the mechanisms aren't there for people to really put anything into operation. We're helpless. We are totally helpless. Now, short of going out on the street, and I think going out on the street is a very uncivilized way of running a country. And standing in the cold and the rain and getting pneumonia and whatever, that's no way to try to have your voice heard. And a few years ago, when the old age pensioners went out on the street, and everybody thought, well, they had an impact and they made the government do a U-turn. But what do they have to do to get that? Stand in the cold and the rain in the middle of winter, old people, some of them very ill, some of them even on their deathbed. And Anna Manahan was on her deathbed. And that's what they had to do to have their voice heard. That's a very uncivilized way to run a country, and for people to be able to have a voice. And even then, while the government did a bit of a U-turn on €8 a week or €10 a week, whatever it was they were going to take out of their minimal old age pension, they took it back in spades, in property charges, in water charges now, and so many other charges, upping the price of fuel, upping the price of the briquettes, whatever. They took it back in spades. So they really didn't get their way, you know. So we're not in control of our own country. And we need, it was the saddest thing I saw when I saw those people standing on the street, when I knew what the alternative was. You don't see people standing out in the cold and the rain in Switzerland. They just go, yeah, I like that idea. There's my signature. There you go. That's it. That's civilized. And that's people coming together and sharing ideas. And if it doesn't work, the people can change it. Politicians won't change things. They won't do U-turns. They don't like admitting they're wrong. Look at what's happening at the moment. Every day of the week, you hear it on the news. They don't like admitting when they're wrong. But the people have no problem as a nation saying that's not working, let's change it. You know, it's not a problem. So direct democracy it works. And if you look at Switzerland, it works. The country works. Everything works. Everything goes on time. The place is spotless. There's so much money that they're not spending that we spend on things from vandalism and crime and all of these things that are costing the state money. Health. The people are healthier because they feel in control of their lives. You know, when you feel depressed, when you feel, put down, your health deteriorates. And we have record suicide levels now in this country. All of these things, health, crime, vandalism, you don't see it in Switzerland. A friend of mine had an experience 35 years ago. This is before Eco this and Green that. And he was sitting in a small town and he was waiting for a friend and his car was just quietly ticking over in this little town. There was nobody around. And the car was just, like I said, quietly ticking over. And there was a knock on the window. And there was a woman outside and he put the window down and said, "Excuse me, could you just turn your engine off? You're polluting the air in the street." You wouldn't get that here. You'd really be afraid to say it to somebody here, And this is the sense they had of ownership of their air, of their streets, of their village, everything. They have ownership. And every man in Switzerland has a gun, for instance, because they all do some national service. The reason for that is because they were surrounded by their fellow countrymen, because Switzerland is made up of 5 nationalities. You have the French, the Italian, the German, the original Swiss, the Helvetians, and there's a romantic race there as well. So there's 5 general nationalities there. That's split off from their fellow countries because that's where they met. And they work together as a people. So they haven't had a war in 600 years. They haven't had, the country is made up of 2 nationalities, or 2 religions, mainly Protestants and Catholics. They haven't had any religious conflicts or internal conflicts because the people come together to resolve them. They're not afraid of electing a Catholic whatever or a Protestant minister or whatever, because at the end of the day, he doesn't have the last say. It's the people who have the last say. So when you hear dictates coming from Switzerland, it's not Jorgen or whoever this says, like Tony Blair or Barroso or someone like this. It's the Swiss. You never hear somebody making a dictate on behalf of the Swiss. It's the Swiss. The people have made these decisions or allowed these decisions to go through on behalf of the government, but it's the Swiss. So that's the power these people have. They don't have someone like Cowan making some dictate, So it's a system we need. And what I discovered when I started with the idea of setting this up as a political party, I discovered, in fact, it was Jan pointed out to me. He was the first person I contacted when I decided to set up a political party. And he said, "Well, do you realize you had this under your first constitution?" I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "Yeah, the founding fathers of the Irish Free State gave the people the power of referendum." And I was shocked. He said, "Yeah, 1922, that was in our constitution. You needed 50,000 signatures or 70,000 to call a referendum. It was a very basic form of direct democracy, but the people could call a referendum. And one of the first things the government did, after about 4 years, the government took it out of the constitution and gave that power to themselves. Now only a challenge to the constitution or the government can call a referendum, and it is always usually the government that call a referendum. We don't. So if you're feeling a bit tired of referendums being called, don't, because you should be calling. It'd be a whole different story if you were the ones calling the referendum. The government call a referendum to suit themselves or to divert from a real problem, to get everybody talking about something and concerned about something, while the real problem is really just being whitewashed over. But if we could call the referendum, it would be a whole different country and a whole different story. So I asked, well, how did they take it out of the Constitution, because the people would have had to vote to take it out of the Constitution, because you can't take anything out of the Constitution without going to a referendum to the people. How did they get away with that? And how they got away with it was Article 50 of the Constitution allowed the government to make amendments to the Constitution, not change it, but make amendments. And the amendment that they made was that when they interfered with the Constitution, or took something out of the Constitution and put something in, they had to put it to a vote to the people within 2 years. So what did they do? They changed that to 8 years. And there was a huge protest at the time. 100,000 signatures was got against what they were doing, and the people were completely ignored. And their excuse: we're not denying you your right to have a referendum, we're just extending the period that we have to put it to you. That was how they got it out. And they were entitled to do that. It wasn't actually illegal. They just played with the wording. What did they do at the end of that 8 years, having denied the people the right to have a referendum on this, and what they had done to the Constitution? They extended it by another 8 years, effectively denying the people the right to have a referendum. So in the meantime, what happened after that? We got our freedom from the Brits, and a new constitution was drawn up, the one we have today. And in the fine print was put, the government retain the right of referendum, more or less. Well, they never had it to retain in the first place, because we never voted to allow them to have that power to call a referendum and take it away from us. But unfortunately, not many people read the fine print, a bit like the Lisbon Treaty. Anybody here read the Lisbon Treaty? I don't think anybody in the country read it. I don't think none of the politicians read it. About 4 feet off the ground. Everybody signed off on the second constitution, which allowed them then to keep that power of referendum. And we've been stuck with that ever since. And we can see the end result, which is why probably most people are here tonight. The end result being that we are a voiceless people. We get to vote for Tweedledum or Tweedledee, parties that have power, have money, that can dictate what it takes to become a political party, that control the media, that stops parties like ourselves, small parties, coming up and getting the sort of coverage that they need. How are you supposed to get into power if the media suppress coverage of your ideas and concepts? So they have control, and they're not very good at giving up that control, and they won't give it up without a fight. So it'll be up to us as a people to spread this message to everybody that we know, that there is another way. There is another way of running a country, one that works, one that engages and involves people. And I often took the example, it's kind of superficial example, but I'm old enough to remember Ireland almost 50 years ago when I hitchhiked around to Flackhills and things like that. And it was a very grey place. The towns and villages were very grey. People didn't paint their shop fronts. They were dark greens or dark browns or black or whatever, and it was all a very dark and dismal sort of place. People were lovely. The countryside was beautiful. The towns and villages were very grey. And somebody came up with the idea of the Tidy Towns competition. And they engaged people and involved people in their local towns and villages to start a competition. And that competition, I'm, like I said, old enough to see that transition. Most younger people may not have seen it, but I've seen the change that the Tidy Towns competition has made to the towns and villages of Ireland. Some of them look like Smartyland now, they're just riot of colour. But it's for the better. Now, imagine what you could do if you could empower and involve and engage people in that way politically. what kind of transformation you could bring about. If you had that ability to give people that sense that they can make a difference, as they do in the Tidy Towns competition. And it really has transformed Ireland, from my perspective, looking back almost 50 years. It has transformed Ireland, but if you could do that politically, we would be on a par with Switzerland. Switzerland's a beautiful country. You go, it's just like, it's like Toy Town, you know, it's overflowing with flowers. People don't steal stuff off the street. I came back from Switzerland full of the joys, put pots of flowers outside my door, tried to make the place look much better. They were gone within 2 days. They were nicked. You know. So what do? You just kind of go, what's the point? You know, I'm not here to supply flowers to the rest of the country. You know. So you give up. But we have a window of opportunity now, I believe, because I think people are waking up. I believe they're angry enough. I believe that they're depressed enough to look for some other way of doing things here. And we are, I think most people are beginning to realize we are out of control. And we need to take that control back as a people. And we need to assert ourselves, our sovereignty, and not be treated like fools and like idiots, because we're not. We're very clever people, and we're very talented people, I believe, and all of the signs around us. But we don't engage. And we have, when it comes to voting, we vote within the boundaries, and very tight boundaries, of a political system. Who do you vote for? What's the point? They're all the same. Only 30% of the people vote, and only a small percentage of them vote for the parties that get in. So 10 or 12% of the population are dictating to the other 70 or 80% of the population. So this has to stop. More people have to be engaged, more people have to be involved, and we need to be able to have a voice as a people and not be silenced and told, this is the way it is, this is what it's going to be. Take it or leave it. You know. That's dictatorship, and that's virtually what we have now. Everything is just being imposed on us against our will as a people. And the government, the people in power, are very frightened of this. And that's why they won't take what we're doing lightly. They're frightened of that idea. When they took it out of the original the 1922 Constitution, in 4 years, nobody had exercised even that right that they had to call referendum. People didn't go mad. They let the government get on with what they were doing. It was only when they went to take it out of the Constitution that people tried to assert their right to stop them doing what they were doing. Their right under that Constitution, and they were denied that. So that was the start of dictatorship, really. You know. So, and 100,000 signatures in a day when there was no internet, no mobile phones, no telephones virtually. The average person didn't have a telephone even. That was an amazing accomplishment. Very quickly, 100,000 signatures were got. And that's how aware people were, politically aware. So we need that power back, and I'm here tonight, and I'll hand you over to Jan, who's the new leader of Direct Democracy. He's just taken over from Ben Gilroy. Ben Gilroy is, some people will know him here. He's just stepped aside because he has a lot of legal work to do at the moment. He helps people stay in their homes who are being, who are having their homes possibly repossessed or their businesses repossessed by the banks. And he tries to help people to stay there. And he does great work. Some of these people are suicidal. And this is what we need to change. We need to give people hope. We need to put power back in our own hands and come up with all the solutions, alternative solutions, without being dictated to and told, sorry, this is the way it is. So I'll hand you over to Jan now. I don't know if there's any questions in relation to what I've just been speaking about. Anybody, anything?
Just in relation to relation to the Articles
7,
48. I was reading them, and they're a little bit watery, I would feel, for today, for what we need today. For instance, I don't know about financial stuff and that.
People weren't allowed to call referendum on financial issues.
Yeah.
And that was because we had, we were in partnership, in a sense, with the Crown. And they wanted to keep control of the money, if you like. And they probably still do. But
basically,
but yes, it's more the principles of 47, 48 that we want, which is the right to call referendum and recall, which means that if we're not happy with a politician, if he's reneging on his promises, we can take him out. So, like, if we can hire them, we can fire them.
My actual question is, do you have, or does anyone the top people in the party or whatever the party itself have any wording in mind for a foreign amendment or for amendments that will fit into the Constitution? Because if you allow the government to get control of this, they'll put in something peculiar, like we'll allow people who own a Volkswagen and live in Foxrock to do this, but no one else. They put something silly in just so that it will be voted down.
Having said that,
it will be voted out and that.
Yeah.
But would it not be advisable to kind of preempt the thing by having some kind of wording prepared in advance?
Yeah. I am Jan
You sit
Van.
back here and lean on the chair with that in the center.
Current leader of PDI, and I've been working with Direct Democracy for a while. Essentially, what we'll do is, right now we're far away from getting the amendment in, but it's something that I've been working on in the background. And essentially, what I would do is I'm connected with a lot of the direct democracy movements, and especially the people in Switzerland. And I would work on crafting a modern version of that, not exactly Articles 47 and 48, but an article that would update it based on what we know now. And the thing about it is, do you know who Daryl Figgis is? He chaired the original committee that wrote the Constitution, the first Constitution for the Irish Free State, and he wrote a book on the Irish Constitution, an explanation on the Irish Constitution, and it's very interesting if you read that. I've been reading it lately, and the reasons for direct democracy haven't changed. Daryl Figgis said. He starts off explaining. If I might as well just launch into it. He explained that in 1831, the Swiss people had all these like little mini states, and he said in 1831 he says that the citizens of the canton or the province of St. Gallen, which is where I used to live, declared themselves sovereign. Said we are sovereign. Started with a little province. They said we are sovereign, and that meant that yes, they were a sovereign people, and they had business to do, the business of their province. So they said, okay, we'll cede some of that sovereignty to representatives, because they can carry out our business for us, because we can't carry out all of the business for the entire province ourselves. We'll let them do it for us, And then when they craft laws, then they have to come to us and we'll approve them or not. So that's how it happened. That's how the first idea of referendum happened, was a bunch of citizens who said, yeah, we can have lawmakers make our laws and write them and work all that stuff out, but we want the right to approve them. And you still see that in Switzerland. I sometimes go to Canton Glarus, which is where a good friend of mine lives. It's kind of in the Alps. And once a year, most of the citizens of that county will assemble. Just like here, we're having a meeting tonight, but you chose to come, and not all of Dublin came. You chose to come, right? So in the same way, in the city of Glarus, they all assemble in the city of Glarus. They all get checked. Their ID gets checked, and then they can vote. And so they bring out this law, and everybody goes yay or nay, and they bring out that law, and everybody goes yay or nay, and the actual citizens of that county approve the laws, right? So what happened is that they started doing that in 1831, and it worked really well. So then all the other counties or cantons in Switzerland started to do the same. And after they've been doing that for a while, and was working really well, they had this ingenious idea. They said, well, look, if we're approving the laws that the politicians are creating, or the legislators are creating for us, why don't we just initiate laws too? So if they can create laws, well, we can create them as well. And that's where the idea of an initiative came. So now that meant that they said, well, that's great, that's working. So now we can conceive of something, like an idea or a new law or something we want to implement. And if I can get enough signatures of my people in our area, and we meet a particular threshold of signatures, then we should have a vote on that as well. And so that's where the two ideas of referendum and initiative came along. And it was the original framers of the Irish Free State Constitution that picked up on that, right? And Darrell Figgis is quite often given the credit for putting that idea into the Constitution. And he actually wrote a book about it. And he explained. He said that the reason that he felt that direct democracy needed to be implemented, because he noticed that in countries where you had democracies, you ended up with political parties. And when you have a political party, you have a kind of a top-down format, just like we have now. You have kind of the executive of the party, and then you have the membership of the party. But it's really the executive that makes the decisions. And even now, like when they're in power, they won't tolerate any kind of dissent, right? And he said that what happens with political parties is that they get to a point where they become so internally focused that they lose a connection with the people that they represent. And therefore, the decisions that they make are more self-centered decisions for the party than for the people. Or decisions you have to hold on to power or throw the people a bone, or they play a game with power, right? And he said that's why he put direct democracy into the Constitution, was to break that. Because he said that the difference was that with direct democracy, it's like a pyramid, and you have the executive at the apex of power, but the executive serves the people. It's a true thing, because the people have the power to decide for the executive and to throw anything out that the executive does through referendum, right? And the way that the pyramid in the other sense works is that the executive thinks that they have all the power, and they tell the people at the bottom of the pyramid what to do. And that's very much like what a sovereign is, like a sovereign king. Like there's a French king once stated, "I am the state. I am the sovereign. I am the state. All power is in me, and I decide how it goes down." And that's very much what you see today. You see a kind of an executive that is making the decision for the people. And the decisions that the executive makes aren't always the right decisions for the people, and quite often very unpopular, right? And quite often when you have a lot of power or decision-making power concentrated in an executive, they're also open for lobbying, right? Because they become the go-to people, right? So let's say you're a banker or a multinational, whatever you want to get done, there's only a couple of guys you have to talk to, maybe the guy at the top, and he can tell the rest of the people how it goes down. And that's very, very much what you have today in a lot of the parliaments, especially in ours, the Dole, where you have that executive committee that dealt with the troika. And then they basically told the cabinet and the rest of the party how it was going to go down, right? And so in a sense, what direct democracy does is it establishes the right relationship between the people and the government. In a sense, and I say this all the time, is that when you broke away from the crown, and when you separated from the crown and became an independent state, in a sense, the people became the sovereign. You're the sovereign. You know, even though we don't really know about that and we don't really believe that, we go like, yeah, right, you know, I live in a democracy and I just vote. But if you really think about it, if you really think about the core essence of what this is, all of us are the sovereign. We are the sovereign together. And we created a representative democracy to carry out our work for us. All the things that need to be done in the country, they do our business for us. They work for us. That's why we call them public servants. You know, but in a sense, and Daryl Figgis also points this out in the book. He says that you know what happens is when you do that, somehow they get the idea that they're more powerful than us, and they start concentrating more and more power in themselves.
And the proof of that is that every 5 years, these people have to come to us to get our permission to tell us what to do.
To maintain their dictatorship.
To maintain that dictatorship. They actually have to. So why don't we just stop that? Let's break that, you know. If they come to us looking for it, why not say no? Vote for Direct Democracy Ireland and take that power back. Don't give it to them. They have to come to us to ask our permission. And we go like, yeah, okay, you know. Instead of going, sorry, you're gone, and this is what we want. We want that power back. And it can be done. So, you know, stop giving your permission. Stop complaining that you're being dictated to. You're giving them permission to dictate to you, you know.
Yeah.
Stop it. You know, that's the best.
Like, for example, I was reading the paper the other day and I saw an article about Sinn Féin. Now, Sinn Féin is promising that if you elect them, you know, first of all, they say if the criteria for forming a government with another party, Fianna Fáil, is that they will only form the government if the party that they form the government with agrees to repeal the property tax.